Welcome to the Short Take. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long week. Welcome to the playoffs. I called a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't think was going to happen, but it did, and here we are, all the way in week 14.
You know what? I think that I'll just go ahead and just take over from here. You know, sometimes it just requires a little bit of somebody who's more involved with the group. You know, things like that. So let's go ahead and get this rolling right now. Let's start this right now. Hey, fantasy playoffs are here, right? That's what we all get excited for. That's what we all play fantasy football for, is for the fantasy playoffs, right? That's what we pay so much attention to standings, right? While we listen to podcasts, while we do research, while we watch film all year long, is for our fantasy playoffs, right? But this kind of feels a little bit different because it's a dynasty league, right? Most of us has always played in our redraft leagues, but this is dynasty, right? So even if we didn't make the playoffs, there's still so much importance to the next couple of weeks, right? One, the people that didn't make the playoffs, hey, heck, we get a nice draft pick, right? We get to start looking forward to who we're going to draft and start doing that research while everybody else is in playoff mode, right? Not only that, we get to start focusing in on next year. Maybe there's some players that we're high on that might make an impact the next year or two that we can go in and pick up immediately, right? So not only that, but that's what playoffs is all about, right? That's what Dynasty League is all about, is because everybody's involved, right? This is the start of a Dynasty team, right? Maybe Mark or Shorty or Vega or Spoons or Kyle or Caden can start a Dynasty run, right? That's why we do this, is to start a dynasty, right? To win multiple years, to be able to dominate this league. So maybe that starts now for those teams. For those of us who don't have that option to start that dynasty this year, is it time to make some moves, right? Is it time to start, looking at trades that could happen? Is it time to start looking at what we're doing for the playoffs? What kind of moves can we make to make our team better? Because in the offseason, unless we want to go into the year with the same team we had this year, we got to make moves. So we got to figure out things we can do, and that's what the beauty of dynasty leagues are. Not only that, but who can make a run right now to win a championship, right? I know the favorite right now is Mr. Mark Galvin, followed by, in my opinion, I think Shorty has a great shot at that. So does Spoons, right? I think those three teams, Caden, should be involved in that mix, followed up with a Kyle and a Vega, right? Anybody can make a move. Look at me last year in our Dynasty League, or in our redraft league, right? Who was the last place team going into the playoffs, made it all the way to the championship game, scored over 200 points, just got beat by Deshario there because his team scored 240 or 250 points. He scored the highest points in the league that year. So anything can happen. So what has been solidified already so far this year are the draft spots, right? So we have the 1 through the 6 already solidified. Those won't change. Right now at the 6th spot, we have Rob Joyner, just barely missing the playoffs, right? Came down to almost the last possession of the last game, the Minnesota game. He didn't get enough points. Missed the playoffs, so he gets a 6th spot in the redraft, which is a great position because this redraft, or this rookie draft, probably has the most talent that we've seen in the rookie draft for the last 5 years. So 6th spot, not bad. 5th spot, Slink. Slink coming at the 5th spot. He's already got a young team, already ready to go for the long haul. He just gets to add to it with the 5th spot. Josh Henderson coming at the 4th spot. All right, another team that has young talent on it that can make some moves moving forward. I'm at the 3. I have a great team as well. Need a couple of pieces here and there. That 3rd spot will help with that. Michelle, right? She grabbed 2 young rookie running backs in the draft that people question, but ended up in the last game of the year beating the team that was the number one team throughout the year in Shorty, right? So, I mean, her team's making moves. She can solidify her team with another solid, good draft. And then the number one team with the most picks in the whole league this year is Justin, right? We can all talk whatever we want to talk about the moves that he's made and how it doesn't align or it does align with his team and blah, 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 blah. But he's got the most picks in a draft with the most players with the highest upside. So he can make some moves this year. So love where we're all standing. The final 6 positions are still yet to be determined, but that's what these next 3 weeks are for, is to determine that, to get to a playoff so somebody can win some money and start that dynasty. So what do the playoffs look like? Well, we have the first and the second seeds there with Mark and Caden. Caden slid up from the bottom to grab that number 2 spot over Shorty, over Kyle, over Spoons, right? He grabbed that spot. The third and the fourth seeds are Vega and Spoons, and the fifth and sixth seeds are Kyle and Shorty. But how do we get there, right? How do we get to this spot over the last week? Well, we had some matchups that we had to take care of, and some people had to win to get into the playoffs, right? That's what's awesome about our league and about our message board, is that we keep you guys up to date as much as possible. We want to make sure that you all, the league, understands and exactly knows what needs to happen in order to make the playoffs. So that way Shorty did such a great job with that last week of making sure everybody knows the circumstances that go down in order for you to make the playoffs. So what does that look like? So last week it was me and Mark. We were matched up. Had I had won the week before, Mark and I's matchup would have been a lot more important because I needed to win to get in, but I didn't do that. So this matchup was kind of mundane, right? Mark won 265 to 107. He was led by Devontae Parker with 40 points. Robert Woods with 33. Look, Robert Woods has come on strong at the end of the season, gave Mark a great another wide receiver that he could use, something he didn't have at the beginning of the season with Woods. So hats off to you there. And then Brady coming off with 36 points, a majority of that coming in the fourth quarter. The next game was Vega beat Slink, which was such an important game, right? Vega wins. He's in the playoffs. He doesn't win. A lot of things happen. Slink can make it in the playoffs, but he did. He won 208 to 182. Dak scoring 30 helped him. KG, Kenny G, with the saxophone, helped him win 30 points. And Cole Beasley, somebody who hasn't been playing that well throughout the year, came through for him in that last game with 25 points. This next matchup, I could have probably called this the matchup of the week, right? Michelle versus Shorty. This matchup had so many implications to it. If Shorty wins, he's in the playoffs, no problem. If he loses, he has to have other people to lose in order for him to make the playoffs, and he lost, right? 219 to 183, which opened the door for other people, right? Mrs. Slink was able to come through with Watson with 37 points, Adams with 24, and Trubisky with over 30 points there, which put Shorty at the L, which left the door open for Rob Joyner to get in the playoffs. We'll hit more on that in just a second. Justin ended up beating Hendo. Not many playoff considerations here. Now there was draft seeding implications, right? If Hendo had won, he would have fallen back a spot. If he lost, he would have stayed right where he was as long as I lost. And he did, right? Justin ended up beating him 240 to 168, led by James White and Allen there with 38 and 30 points respectively. Now this next matchup, Caden versus Rob, had so many fantasy implications dealt to it, right? If Rob won and Shorty lost, that means Shorty did not make the playoffs, right? And Rob would have. It was all set up because Michelle beat Shorty. So it was set up to have that advantage taken care of, but unfortunately Rob couldn't come through with the win, and dude, it came down to the final game, almost to the final drive. he was down 7 points going into that final drive. If Kirk Cousins had thrown a miraculous, fourth quarter comeback and won that game, then Rob makes the playoffs and Shorty doesn't. But Caden held him off, 194 to 187. Tannehill with 21 points. He had other players scoring points for him as well, so he ended up holding them off there. That last game is Spoons versus Kyle. Spoons ended up beating Kyle, which knocked Kyle out of the top part of that the draft, or I mean not the draft, but the playoffs. Knocked him down a few slots. I know he was shooting for that bye week. I know I would have been if I was in Kyle's situation. Trying to get that bye week was imperative for him. He didn't make it. Spoons beat him 229 to 209, led by Matt Ryan with 23 points, Elliott with 21, and Fitzmagic with 41 points. Man, great job for Spoons getting there on that one. Who was our offensive player of the week, right? You got to start the player to be offensive player of the week. And the player that was started that was offensive player of the week that led him to a win was Fitzmagic, right? Ryan Fitzpatrick on Spoons' team scored 41.45 points with his 365 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, and he had 1 2-point conversion. So we got defensive player of the week, right? Who was the player of the week defensive-wise? And it happened to be Devin White, right? He scored 21.77 points fantasy-wise, was on my team, right? Scared to death that I was going to actually win. I set my team accordingly, but I didn't want to win. I wanted to lose so I could get a better draft spot, but my players wanted to perform, and Devin White was a part of that with his 7 tackles, 1 pass deflection, 1 interception, 1 defensive touchdown because of a fumble recovery, led to those 21 points and helped him receive the Defensive Player of the Week. Who was the Team of the Week, right? No surprise here. Same team that's been hot the last 3 or 4 weeks, and that's Mark Galvin, right? 265 points, 265.53 to be exact, right? Mark's been hot all year, right? At least the last 5 or 6 weeks. He made a bunch of trades in the middle of the season, allowed him to adapt to exactly what he was going to see in the future, and he was led by Jackson with 26 points, DJ Moore with 22 points, Devontae Parker with 40, Robert Woods with 33, Tom Brady with 36, and his defensive lineman got him 20 points. What defensive lineman gets you 20 points? Cam Jordan. 20 points. So shit the bed player of the week, or the team of the week, right? So that means what team didn't score points like they should have? That unfortunate trophy goes towards Josh Henderson, right? Scoring 168 points. Normally, in the other league, 168 points. Pretty good. Our Dynasty League, with how many bench players that we have, supporting cast, 2 quarterbacks, 168 points is not a lot. Unfortunately, Hendo did that. When you have 5 players that score a total of 25 points, you don't win a lot of games like that, right? Especially whenever it's your super flex spot. So, unfortunately for Josh, he got the shit the bed team of the week this week. So now it's time for the shoulda, woulda, coulda player of the week. And this one holds a little bit more gumph to it than normally, right? Normally it's just, I just lost a week. Well, this time it's playoff implications, right? If I didn't win this week, I didn't make the playoffs. And that's exactly what happened to a Mr. Rob Joyner, right? He lost this week by less than, or a little bit more than 7 points. Had he had started Deebo Samuel, which got 14-1 points over the backup running back to the Colts and Jonathan Williams, who got 3.5 points, he would have beat his opponent by over 11 points, which would have caused him to make the playoffs, which would have caused Shorty to miss the playoffs, and everything would look totally different. So that is the official all-time of the year shoulda, woulda, coulda player of the week, right? Deebo Samuel. So let's talk about what goes on this week, right? What are the implications? Who's playing who? We have a consolation bracket, right? Doesn't really matter a lot. Doesn't affect draft position or anything like that. So we will play out that as well, right? We might start a poll to see whoever loses the championship game in the consolation bracket has to do something crazy during the draft. We might start a poll to see what that looks like. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But other than that, the consolation bracket doesn't really mean anything. The real meaning is that playoff bracket. And we have Caden and Mark on a first week bye. So who's playing this week? Well, we got Spoons versus Kyle, right? Tough matchup because they had a rematch from last week where Spoons beat Kyle to get into the playoffs, to knock Kyle out of that number 2 seed. Well, let's see who I have picking to win that matchup. I have the Spoons actually winning that matchup versus Kyle. That doesn't mean that I don't like Kyle's team. I really do. I just don't like Kyle's matchups this week, right? He's going against a lot of tough matchups. I just think Spoons has the advantage of, especially right with his Matt Ryan, his Ezekiel Elliott, his Allen, his Chris Godwin, and his Waller. I think those 4 or 5 players will lead him to a championship over what Kyle has going, right? So that's my first prediction. My second prediction is Shorty versus Vega, right? Both have great teams, but something very similar is going on in those matchups that I viewed Spoons and Kyle's situation in. Vega has some tough matchups this week, which is why I like Shorty so much better to win this matchup. I like his Mahomes. I like his Kamara. I like his Lockett, his Edelman, his Rodgers. I think those 5 players will carry him to the next round, right? And that's my playoff predictions for this week. Now, let's get into some information that we need to pass along to you guys at the end of the season to make sure everybody's on the same page. 1, if you haven't paid your dues, I need that as soon as possible, right? I know I've already got the majority of the dues paid, but there are a couple of you out there that I need dues from. I will start calling you out on these videos the farther we go through the playoffs. Shorty and I both will, to make sure that you understand that those dues are important and we need those paid as soon as possible, so I don't have to chase everybody around all through the month of January and February to pay dues out, right? Getting our money as fast as possible is what makes this league legit. If we have to wait for our dues, it brings down the value of our dynasty league, and none of us want that. All right? So we need to pay those dues as soon as possible. Second, we're going to start sending out some polls asking about some changes that everybody would like to see moving into 2020. Please vote on those polls. We put those out there for the betterment of the league. If you don't vote on them, you don't have a say-so, just like in every other poll, right? The presidential election, if you don't vote on it, you can't complain and bitch about who's the president. Same with what's going on here. If you don't vote on the polls and we make a change and you didn't like it and you didn't vote, well, guess who can't bitch? You can't, right? So make sure you vote on these polls. The league will also start almost immediately after the NFL playoffs, right? So we'll go through a 3 or 4 week period here where the league won't be active, but almost immediately after that, the league will become active again, which means you can make trades, right? As we go through this draft process, draft picks will begin rising in value. People will think their players, they need to drop, they need to make trades. Lots of activity in the offseason in dynasty leagues to prepare for the draft. Make sure you don't get left behind and make sure you're in the forefront of that to make sure your team is set up for 2020. Remember, it's a dynasty league. The only way you make moves is to trade, right? So remember that. And then the last part of that is the draft will be a live draft. We will do that in May, right? Most of the time we do our drafts in July and August, but we're not going to do that. We're going to have a live draft, 6 rounds, and it will be of rookies and anybody who's on the free agent pool in May right after the draft. So make sure you're doing your studies as far as who you'd like to draft, who you held high, what your draft process looks like, all the way up to upcoming to the rookie draft, because right after that, I'm going to set that the live draft for a week or 2 after that, so we won't have much time. So I appreciate everybody for week 14, right? That's the week we're on right now. We have 3 weeks left, right? Let's make it fantastic. 3 weeks. Let's see who can win a fantasy football championship.